The massive crystal ship moved through space like a deadly jewel. Admiral Zexthor stood on the command bridge, his tall purple body glowing with the soft light that all Vorthak possessed. His mind connected directly to the ship's systems, feeling every sensor and weapon as if they were part of his own body. This was how the Vorthak had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Perfect unity between mind and machine. "Admiral, we have found something interesting," Commander Velshan said, his thoughts flowing directly into Zexthor's consciousness. The Vorthak did not need to speak with words. Their minds shared information faster than any computer. Zexthor focused his attention on the sensor data. A small blue planet orbited a yellow star in the outer rim of the galaxy. The planet showed signs of life, but the technology readings were primitive. Very primitive. They still use chemical rockets, Velshan's thoughts carried amusement, and their most powerful weapons are nuclear devices. They have not even achieved faster-than-light travel. Admiral Zexthor studied the data with growing interest. In 3,000 years of conquest, the Vorthak had never found a species this backward that had also achieved planetary unity. Most primitive species were still fighting among themselves when the Vorthak arrived. But these humans, as their intercepted communications called them, had something unusual. They had reached their moon and built space stations, yet they still fought wars with metal projectiles. Should we simply destroy them? Velshan asked. It was standard procedure. Planets that offered no strategic value or advanced technology were typically wiped clean and resettled with more useful species. No, Zexthor decided. These humans might make interesting slaves. Their planet has good resources and they seem to have some basic engineering skills. We will offer them the chance to surrender. On the distant blue planet, Dr. Taemin Park was working late in his laboratory when every radio telescope on Earth suddenly started screaming warnings. The signals were impossible to ignore. Something massive had just appeared at the edge of their solar system. Taemin grabbed his phone and called General Hyunwoo Kim, the head of Earth's Unified Defense Council. "General, you need to see this. We have multiple objects approaching Earth. They are not asteroids or comets. They are artificial." Within hours, the news spread across the planet. President So-Young Lee called an emergency meeting with world leaders. The objects were clearly ships, enormous crystalline vessels that made Earth's largest space stations look like toys. As the ships moved closer, their size became terrifying. The smallest one was larger than any city on Earth. How many? President Lee asked during the emergency video conference. 47 ships, General Kim reported. The largest one is over 50 kilometers long. Our satellites can barely track them all. Dr. Taemin Park had been chosen to lead Earth's first contact team because of his work in communications and linguistics. He had spent years developing protocols for meeting alien life, but he had never imagined it would happen like this, with a massive fleet appearing suddenly in Earth's orbit. The aliens did not wait long to make contact. A beam of energy struck every major communication satellite simultaneously, and suddenly every television, radio, and computer screen on Earth showed the same image. A tall, purple-skinned being stood in what appeared to be a crystal chamber. Its eyes glowed with inner light, and when it spoke, the words came in perfect English, Chinese, Spanish, and every other major language on Earth simultaneously. "Primitive beings of the third planet," the alien said, its voice cold and commanding. "I am Admiral Zexthor of the Vorthak Dominion. Your world now belongs to the Empire. You have 72 hours to surrender completely. Lay down all weapons. Cease all military activities. Prepare to accept Vorthak rule. If you comply, your lives will be spared and you will serve the Empire as workers. If you resist, your planet will be cleansed of all life." The transmission ended, leaving Earth in stunned silence. President Lee stared at the blank screen. "Did that actually happen?" General Kim nodded grimly. "Our defense satellites are still functional. The alien ships are holding position in high orbit. They could attack at any time, but they seem to be waiting." Dr. Taemin Park felt his heart racing. "They called us primitive. They think we are easy to defeat." "Maybe we are," President Lee said quietly. "General, what are our options?" General Kim had been studying the alien ships for hours. Their technology is far beyond ours. Those ships don't use any propulsion system we understand. They just move. Our nuclear weapons might scratch their hulls, but I doubt it. "So we surrender?" President Lee asked. "To who?" General Kim replied. "They want complete surrender from the entire planet. But we do not have a world government. Who has the authority to surrender for all of humanity? This was the problem the Vorthak had not considered. In their 3,000 years of conquest, they had always faced unified species or single-planet governments. Earth had over 200 nations, thousands of different cultures, and billions of people who had never agreed on anything in their entire history. Dr. Taemin Park realized something important. They gave us 72 hours, why? If they can destroy us easily, why wait? Maybe they want us to surrender, General Kim suggested. Dead slaves are not very useful. Or maybe, Taemin said slowly, they have never faced a species like us before. Admiral Zexthor waited in his command center, expecting the human surrender within hours. Every other species in the galaxy had surrendered quickly when faced with Vorthak might. The longest any planet had held out was 6 hours, and that was only because their government was hiding in deep bunkers. But as the first day passed, then the second, no surrender came. Instead, the Vorthak intercepted thousands of communications between human governments. They were not preparing to surrender. They were preparing to fight. This is impossible. Commander Velshan projected his confusion to the Admiral. They can see our ships. They must understand they cannot win. Admiral Zexthor studied the intercepted human communications with growing bewilderment. The humans were not acting like any species the Vorthak had ever encountered. They were not unified. Different human governments were making different plans. Some wanted to surrender, others wanted to fight, and still others wanted to hide. But strangest of all, many humans seemed more angry than afraid. Their communications spoke of freedom and independence as if these concepts were more important than survival itself. Admiral, Velshan reported, we are detecting massive movement on the planet's surface. They are mobilizing their militaries. Admiral Zexthor felt the first stirring of something he had not experienced in decades of conquest. Uncertainty. These humans were going to fight. Against impossible odds, with primitive weapons, they were actually going to fight. Perhaps we should begin bombardment immediately, Velshan suggested. No, Admiral Zexthor decided. Let them try. It will be interesting to see what these primitive creatures think they can accomplish. He had no idea that this decision would lead to the downfall of an empire. When the 72 hours ended, Admiral Zexthor began what he called a demonstration of force. 3 smaller Vorthak ships descended through Earth's atmosphere, their crystal hulls shimmering with energy shields. They moved toward major military bases, planning to destroy them quickly and efficiently. The first ship approached Seoul Air Base in South Korea. Captain Jin-Ho Choi watched from his hidden position as the alien vessel landed in the center of the runway. The ship was beautiful in a terrifying way, like a massive purple crystal that seemed to bend light around itself. Remember, Jin-Ho whispered into his radio to his team. They expect us to use energy weapons like lasers or plasma guns. They do not know we still use bullets and explosives. Jin-Ho had been a Special Forces soldier for 15 years. He had fought in conflicts around the world, but never against aliens. Still, an enemy was an enemy, and every enemy had weaknesses. The Vorthak ship opened, and purple-skinned soldiers emerged. They moved with perfect coordination, each one knowing exactly what the others were thinking. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy, and their armor looked like it was made of living crystal. Jin-Ho counted 20 aliens. They spread out across the airfield, clearly planning to destroy the human aircraft and buildings. What they did not expect was the buried explosives that Jin-Ho's team had planted during the night. Now, Jin-Ho whispered. The explosions erupted from underground, sending chunks of concrete and metal flying into the air. The Vorthak soldiers were thrown to the ground, their perfect coordination shattered by surprise and pain. Their energy shields flickered and failed as debris struck them from below. Jin-Ho and his team opened fire with conventional assault rifles. The bullets struck the alien armor and, to Jin-Ho's amazement, punched right through. The Vorthak had never faced kinetic weapons. Their shields were designed to stop energy beams, not metal projectiles. Within minutes, the alien patrol was destroyed. Jin-Ho approached one of the fallen soldiers and examined the crystal armor. It was incredibly advanced, but it had one fatal flaw. It was designed to fight other Vorthak species with similar technology. Meanwhile, in a laboratory in Seoul, Dr. Yoonji Kim was studying pieces of alien technology that had been recovered from the crashed ship. She was a materials scientist who specialized in crystalline structures, and the Vorthak technology fascinated her. "Look at this," she told her colleague, Engineer Dongmin Yang, as she examined a piece of alien equipment under a microscope. "The entire structure is based on harmonic resonance. These crystals vibrate at very specific frequencies." Dongmin leaned closer. "What does that mean?" "It means they have a weakness," Yunji said excitedly. "If we can generate the right sound waves, we might be able to disrupt their technology entirely." Working through the night, Yunji and Dongmin developed a prototype sonic weapon. It was crude, basically a powerful speaker that could generate specific frequencies. But when they tested it on captured Vorthak equipment, the results were dramatic. The alien devices simply fell apart. Across the city, communications officer Su Bin Han was intercepting Vorthak transmissions. She did not understand their language, but she noticed something strange about their communication patterns. "They are all connected," she told her supervisor. "Every message goes to every ship at the same time. They do not have individual communication channels. What does that mean?" her supervisor asked. "It means they think as a group," Subin explained. "But it also means that if we can disrupt their communications, we can disrupt all of them at once." The second alien landing took place outside Moscow, where the Vorthak expected to face desperate resistance from primitive humans with crude weapons. Instead, they found something that confused them completely. The humans were not where the aliens expected them to be. Colonel Pavel Volkov had studied every alien invasion movie ever made, and he knew that the worst thing to do was meet the aliens in open battle. Instead, he ordered his forces to abandon their bases and fight from hidden positions in the forests and cities. The Vorthak soldiers landed and found empty military bases. They searched for humans to fight but found only empty buildings and silence. Then the attacks began. A sniper's bullet would strike from a building window. By the time the aliens turned to return fire, the sniper was gone. Explosives would detonate under their feet as they walked down streets. Human soldiers would appear, fire their weapons, and disappear again before the aliens could coordinate a response. The Vorthak had never encountered guerrilla warfare. Their entire military doctrine was based on facing other organized armies in direct combat. They did not know how to fight an enemy that refused to stand and fight. But the most important discovery came from an unexpected source. Dr. Minseo Park was a neuroscientist studying brain activity in her laboratory when the alien invasion began. As she monitored her own brainwaves during the stress of the attacks, she noticed something unusual. Human brains produced a constant background of electrical activity, what she called neural static. It was chaotic, unpredictable, and seemed to have no purpose. But when she compared it to intercepted data about Vorthak brain activity, she realized something incredible. The aliens' brains worked like perfectly tuned radios, broadcasting and receiving thoughts with crystal clarity. But human brains were like radio stations with terrible reception, full of static and interference. "We are not psychically gifted," Minseo explained to the Emergency Science Council. "We are psychically noisy. Our brains jam their mental connections just by being near them." This explained why the Vorthak coordination had failed during close combat. When human soldiers got within a few hundred meters of the aliens, the Vorthak started making mistakes. Their perfect teamwork began to break down. Admiral Zexthor stared at the reports from the planet's surface with growing disbelief. 3 ships destroyed, 47 soldiers dead, and the humans were not surrendering, they were fighting harder. How is this possible? Commander Velshan projected his confusion. They are using primitive weapons. Their technology is thousands of years behind ours. They are not fighting like civilized beings, Admiral Zexthor replied. They hide, they run. They attack from behind. This is not honorable combat. The Admiral had spent his entire career fighting other advanced species who followed recognized rules of warfare. Ships fought ships in space. Armies met armies on battlefields. When one side was clearly defeated, they surrendered. These humans seem to have no concept of honor or proper military conduct. Should we begin orbital bombardment? Velshan asked. We could destroy their major cities from space. Admiral Zexthor considered this. Orbital bombardment would certainly end the human resistance, but it would also destroy most of the planet's infrastructure and kill the potential slave population. The Emperor would not be pleased if Zexthor returned with a dead world. No, the Admiral decided. Send more ground forces. These humans cannot resist indefinitely. But even as he gave the order, Admiral Zexthor felt something he had not experienced in decades of conquest. Doubt. The humans were supposed to be primitive and weak. They were supposed to surrender when faced with superior force. Instead, they were teaching the galaxy something it had forgotten during 3,000 years of Vorthak rule. They were teaching it how to fight back. In hidden bunkers around the world, human scientists and soldiers worked frantically to understand their enemy. They studied captured alien technology, developed new weapons, and shared information faster than ever before in human history. For the first time since the Vorthak Empire began, an invasion was not going according to plan. The aliens had expected fear and submission. Instead, they found determination and defiance. And in the depths of space on planets scattered across the galaxy, other enslaved species began to hear whispers of impossible news. Someone was fighting the Vorthak. Someone was actually fighting back. The humans did not know it yet, but their resistance was already beginning to crack the foundations of an empire that had seemed unshakable for 3 millennia. Every bullet fired, every bomb exploded, every small victory against impossible odds sent a message across the stars. The message was simple. The Vorthak could be beaten, and that message, more than any weapon, would prove to be the beginning of the Empire's doom. News of the human resistance spread through the galaxy like wildfire. For 3,000 years, no species had successfully fought back against the Vorthak Empire. Most worlds surrendered within hours of seeing the crystal fleets appear in their skies. But the humans had been fighting for 2 weeks, and they were winning small battles every day. On the prison world of Kepler-7, an old alien named Thrix whispered the impossible news to his fellow slaves. The humans destroyed another Vorthak ship yesterday. They captured it and flew it away. His cellmate, a reptilian being called Kess, shook his head. Impossible. No one can fly Vorthak ships. They require psychic connection. That is what makes it so amazing, Thrix replied. The humans cannot connect psychically to anything. But somehow they made the ship work anyway. Back on Earth, Colonel Woojin Park stood inside the captured Vorthak vessel, trying to understand how the aliens had made such a terrible mistake. The ship had landed to attack a military base in Japan. But the Vorthak crew had not expected the base to be empty, and they certainly had not expected the underground tunnels that led directly beneath their landing site. Woojin's team had used those tunnels to plant explosives under the ship's landing legs. When the charges detonated, the ship had tilted sideways, trapping most of the crew inside. The few aliens who escaped were quickly overwhelmed by conventional weapons. "How do we fly this thing?" asked Dr. Haiwan Kim, the engineer who had been assigned to study the captured ship. She ran her hands over the crystal control panels, but nothing responded to her touch. "The aliens connect to it with their minds," Woojin said, "but we do not have psychic abilities." Haiwan had been studying captured Vorthak technology for days, and she had noticed something important. The ship responds to electrical signals from their brains. If we can generate the right electrical patterns, maybe we can fool it into thinking we are Vorthak. Working with a team of neuroscientists, Haiwan developed a crude neural interface. It was basically a helmet covered in electrodes that could generate electrical patterns similar to Vorthak brainwaves. When she put it on and touched the ship's controls, the crystal panels flickered to life. "It works," she shouted with excitement. "I can feel the ship's systems. It is like the ship is alive." The captured Vorthak vessel became humanity's first step into advanced technology. More importantly, it became a weapon that the aliens never saw coming. Admiral Zexthor was reviewing casualty reports when his ship's alarm suddenly screamed warnings. A Vorthak vessel was approaching at high speed, but something was wrong with its identification signals. "That is Scout Ship Velkara," Commander Velshan reported. "But I cannot sense the crew's minds. The psychic connection is strange." "Strange how?" Admiral Zexthor demanded. "It feels like static, like interference." The approaching ship suddenly accelerated beyond normal safety limits, heading directly for the Vorthak supply depot on the dark side of Earth's moon. Admiral Zexthor realized with horror what was happening. "The humans have captured one of our ships," he projected to his crew. "Stop them!" But it was too late. Colonel Woojin Park, wearing the crude neural interface helmet, piloted the stolen ship directly into the center of the alien supply depot. The crash and resulting explosion destroyed enough equipment and fuel to supply the entire invasion force for months. Emperor Kethmar received Admiral Zexthor's report with growing anger. The Emperor was over 400 years old and had ruled the galaxy for most of that time. He had conquered dozens of species and crushed hundreds of rebellions. He had never encountered anything like the humans, you are telling me. The Emperor's thoughts burned with fury. That primitive savages have destroyed a supply depot, captured our technology, and are still refusing to surrender? Yes, Your Magnificence, Admiral Zexthor replied carefully. They are unlike any species we have encountered. They do not fight with honor. They use deception and treachery. Then stop treating them with honor, Emperor Kethmar ordered. I am sending Admiral Raymoth with the 5th Fleet. End this embarrassment, immediately. Admiral Raymoth was known throughout the galaxy as the World Breaker. He had personally conquered 17 star systems and had never failed to crush resistance. His fleet consisted of 50 of the Empire's most powerful warships, crewed by veteran soldiers who had never known defeat. When news of the approaching fleet reached Earth, many human leaders despaired. General Hyunwoo Kim studied the sensor readings with a sinking heart. 50 ships, he told President So-Young Lee. Each one larger than anything in the first wave. Our captured ship's computer says Admiral Raymoth has never lost a battle. But Dr. Youngmi Seo, a quantum physicist working with the Resistance, had been studying human brain activity and its effect on Vorthak technology. She had made a discovery that might change everything. We know that human brains interfere with Vorthak's psychic abilities, she explained to the Emergency Council. But what if we could amplify that interference? Youngmi had been working with captured alien technology to understand how Vorthak minds connected to their ships and weapons. She discovered that their entire fleet operated on a single psychic network. Every ship, every weapon, every system was connected through the minds of the crew. If we can broadcast human brainwave patterns at high power, she continued, we might be able to disrupt their entire fleet at once. The plan was desperate and dangerous. Corporal Jae-hyun Lee volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. Wearing captured Vorthak armor and carrying Youngmi's experimental device, he would infiltrate Admiral Raymoth's flagship and plant the neural disruptor at the center of the ship's psychic network. Jae-hyun had trained for special operations his entire military career, but nothing had prepared him for walking through the corridors of an alien warship. The Vorthak crew moved with perfect coordination, their minds linked in ways that no human could understand. But that perfect coordination also made them predictable. The aliens expected threats from outside their ship, not from within. They had never faced an enemy who could disguise themselves and move among them. Jae-hyun reached the ship's central command core without being detected. The psychic amplifier chamber was beautiful and terrifying, a crystal sphere surrounded by flowing energy that connected every Vorthak mind in the fleet. Jae-hyun placed Youngmi's device next to the central crystal and activated it. The effect was immediate and devastating. Human brainwave patterns amplified 1,000-fold, flooded through the Vorthak psychic network. Every alien in the fleet suddenly experienced the chaotic, noisy thoughts of human consciousness. For beings who had lived their entire lives in perfect mental harmony, the experience was overwhelming. Ship systems failed as confused Vorthak lost connection with their technology. Weapons powered down as gunners could no longer coordinate their targeting. Navigation systems went offline as pilots lost their psychic link to their vessels. Admiral Raymoth felt his perfectly ordered mind filled with strange, alien thoughts. Human emotions, anger, fear, hope, defiance, crashed through his consciousness like a storm. For the first time in his 400-year life, he could not sense the minds of his crew. What is happening? He tried to project to his officers, but his thoughts scattered like leaves in the wind. The 5th Fleet, the most powerful military force in the galaxy, drifted helplessly in space as their crews struggled to understand what had happened to them. Some ships crashed into each other as their pilots lost control. Others simply shut down completely as their systems failed. On planets across the galaxy, enslaved species watched their Vorthak overseers stumble and fall as the psychic feedback reached every corner of the Empire. For the first time in 3,000 years, the aliens seemed vulnerable. Resistance leader Bora Kim seized the moment. Using captured communication equipment, she began broadcasting instructions to every enslaved world in the galaxy. The Vorthak can be beaten, her message spread through hyperspace. Use kinetic weapons, bullets, arrows, rocks. Their shields cannot stop them. Attack their crystal technology with sound waves. When you get close to them, their coordination fails. On 17 different worlds, uprisings began simultaneously. The Kelhari, aquatic beings who had been enslaved for centuries, used human-designed sonic weapons to shatter Vorthak underwater bases. The insectoid Thrixians employed guerrilla tactics that the aliens had never encountered. Emperor Kethamar felt his empire shaking for the first time in millennia. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Rebellions, defeated fleets, destroyed bases. And at the center of it all were the humans, the primitive species that was supposed to have been conquered in a single day. How? The Emperor raged at his advisors.
How can this be happening?
But none of his advisors had an answer. The Vorthak Empire had been built on the assumption that superior technology and psychic coordination would always triumph over primitive resistance. They had never considered that their greatest strength could become their greatest weakness. As news of Admiral Ramoth's defeat spread, something impossible began to happen. Species that had been enslaved for generations began to remember what freedom meant. The galaxy was waking up from 3,000 years of submission, and the humans, the noisy, chaotic, impossible humans, had shown them the way. The galaxy had not seen anything like it in 3,000 years. On world after world, species that had lived under Vorthak rule for centuries suddenly remembered that they had once been free. The human resistance had done more than defeat alien fleets. It had awakened something that the Empire thought was dead forever. On the water world of Aquarius Prime, the Kelhari moved through their underwater cities with new purpose. These dolphin-like beings had been forced to mine crystal formations from the ocean floor for Vorthak technology. Now armed with human-designed sonic weapons, they turned those same crystals into weapons of liberation. Kelhari engineer Splash of Moonlight activated the sonic disruptor that human resistance fighters had taught her people to build. The Vorthak underwater facility shook as its crystal walls began to crack and crumble. The alien guards, their psychic coordination already damaged by the neural static, could barely coordinate a defense. For our children who have never seen the surface, Splash of Moonlight called to her fellow rebels as they swarmed the collapsing base. Meanwhile, on the desert world of Kepler 9, the insectoid Thrixians emerged from the tunnels where they had hidden for generations. Their natural ability to work as a coordinated swarm had been suppressed by Vorthak mind control devices. But the human neural static had broken those controls. Queen worker Buzz in Harmony led 10,000 of her people in a coordinated assault on the planetary control center. The Thrixians moved like a living wave across the desert, using human guerrilla tactics combined with their natural teamwork. The confused Vorthak garrison, still reeling from the psychic feedback, could not mount an effective defense. But the most important battle was happening in space, where Captain Sung Ho Yang commanded humanity's first faster-than-light mission. His ship was a hybrid of human engineering and captured Vorthak technology, crewed by volunteers who knew they might never return to Earth. Proxima Station in sight, reported navigator Daesom Kim as they dropped out of hyperspace. The massive prison facility hung in the darkness between stars, holding thousands of humans captured during the early days of the invasion. But Seung-ho had not come just to rescue human prisoners. Intelligence reports suggested that Proxima Station held representatives from dozens of enslaved species, leaders who had been captured during failed rebellions over the centuries. Remember, Seung-ho told his crew, "We are not just rescuing prisoners. We are creating an alliance." The assault on Proxima Station became the first truly multi-species military operation in galactic history. Human soldiers fought alongside Kelhari swimmers, Thrixian warriors, and dozens of other species who had been waiting for this moment for generations. Dr. Ji Hee-kwan, working in a laboratory hidden beneath the ruins of Seoul, made a breakthrough that would change the course of the war. She had been studying Vorthak physiology using tissue samples from captured aliens, and she discovered something remarkable about their nervous systems. Their psychic abilities make them incredibly sensitive to specific electromagnetic frequencies, she explained to her research partner, Hyun-Soo Park. It is like they have no natural protection against certain types of neural interference. Working day and night, Ji-hai and Hyun-Soo developed what they called the neural disruptor, a weapon that specifically targeted Vorthak brain chemistry without affecting other species. Unlike the crude sonic weapons that had been used before, this device could disable Vorthak soldiers without permanent harm, while leaving their alien allies completely unaffected. "This changes everything," General Hyun-woo Kim said when he saw the weapon demonstrated. "We can now fight alongside our alien allies without worrying about friendly fire." But Emperor Kethamar was not finished. Faced with rebellions across his empire and the humiliating defeat of his finest fleet, the ancient ruler made a decision that would prove to be his greatest mistake. If they will not submit to the empire, he declared to his remaining admirals, then they will all die. Activate the planet killer weapons. The Worldbreaker array had not been used for over 2,000 years. These ancient weapons could sterilize entire solar systems, turning living worlds into dead rock. The Emperor had avoided using them because dead worlds provided no slaves or resources, but his pride had been wounded beyond reason. Admiral Morketh, the new commander of the Vorthak forces, received his orders with grim satisfaction. He had always believed that mercy was weakness. The humans and their alien allies wanted to fight. He would give them a war they would never forget. The first target was Kepler 442b, a colony world where humans and Thrixians had established a joint settlement. 2 million beings lived on the planet's surface when Admiral Morketh's fleet arrived. "Surrender, immediately or face complete destruction," the Admiral broadcast to the planet. The response came from Colony Commander Min Jae-son, a former South Korean diplomat who had been leading the settlement. "We are free beings on a free world. We do not recognize Vorthak authority. If you want our world, you will have to take it from our dead bodies." Admiral Morketh smiled coldly and gave the order to fire. The planet died in minutes. The Worldbreaker weapons turned the atmosphere into plasma and boiled the oceans away. Every living thing on Kepler 442b was reduced to ash in an instant. But Admiral Morketh had made a critical error in judgment. He thought that the destruction of Kepler 442b would terrify the rebels into submission. Instead, it proved to every species in the galaxy that the Vorthak would destroy anyone who sought freedom. The news of the colony's destruction spread across the galaxy faster than the speed of light. On every enslaved world, beings who had been wavering between submission and rebellion suddenly understood that they had no choice. The Vorthak would kill them whether they resisted or not. Admiral Sun Woo Jang, commanding the newly formed Terran Liberation Fleet, received the news while preparing for an assault on a Vorthak stronghold. Her crew included humans, Kelhari, Thrixians, and representatives from 17 other species. When she announced what had happened to Kepler 442b, the bridge fell silent. "They killed everyone," she said quietly. 2 million people gone." The silence stretched for long moments. Then one by one, every being on the bridge stood up. Human, alien, young, old. They all rose to their feet in tribute to the dead. "They want to kill us all," said Kelhari Captain Ripple of Stars. "Then we have nothing left to lose, and everything to fight for," added Thrixian Warrior Prime Click of Determination, Admiral Sun Woo. Yang felt something she had never experienced before. The absolute unity of different species joined by a common cause. Humans fought for freedom because they had never known anything else, but these alien species fought for freedom because they remembered what slavery felt like. "Send a message to every rebel fleet in the galaxy," she ordered. "Tell them we are not just fighting for our worlds anymore. We are fighting for the future of every living being in the galaxy." The destruction of Kepler 442b marked the point of no return for both sides. The Vorthak Empire had revealed its true nature. It would rather rule over dead worlds than allow any species to be free. And the rebels had discovered that they shared something more powerful than any weapon: the absolute determination to ensure that no one would ever live in slavery again. In hidden bunkers and secret bases across the galaxy, leaders of the resistance made plans for the final campaign. They knew now that there could be no negotiated peace, no compromise, no surrender. The war would end only when the Vorthak Empire was completely destroyed, or every free being in the galaxy was dead. Captain Juwan Lee, leading a mixed squadron of human and alien fighters, expressed what everyone was thinking as they prepared for the battles ahead. "They made it simple for us," he said. "Either we win everything or we lose everything. There is no middle ground left." The galaxy was divided now between those who would kneel and those who would die standing. And thanks to a small blue planet on the edge of space, The number of those willing to die for freedom was growing larger every day. The empire that had ruled for 3,000 years was about to learn that some things were more powerful than fear. Some things were worth any sacrifice, and some fights were worth fighting even when victory seemed impossible. The humans had taught the galaxy to remember what freedom meant. Now it was time to teach the Vorthak what it would cost them to take that freedom away. The Vorthak Empire stretched across 400 star systems, connected by a network of hyperspace gates that allowed instant travel between worlds. For 3,000 years, this network had been the Empire's greatest strength, allowing rapid deployment of forces to crush any rebellion before it could spread. Now, that same network had become a highway for revolution. Admiral Sun Wu-Jang stood on the bridge of the Liberation Fleet's flagship, studying tactical displays that showed rebel forces advancing on dozens of fronts simultaneously. Her fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships from 30 different species, all working together under human tactical doctrine. Kelhari assault teams have secured the tidal gate, reported Communications Officer Yejin Park. Thrixian. Swarm fleets are moving through the spiral corridor. The Vorthak can no longer move reinforcements freely. Sun Wu nodded grimly. The plan was working, but at enormous cost. Every hyperspace gate they captured came at the price of thousands of lives. The Vorthak were fighting with desperate fury, knowing that their 3,000-year reign was coming to an end. "Admiral," called out Navigator Soo-Hyun Kim, "we are approaching the Nexus Gate." The Nexus Gate was the strategic heart of the Vorthak Empire, a massive hyperspace junction that connected the inner and outer regions of the galaxy. Whoever controlled it could cut the Empire in half or unite it under a single command. It was also the most heavily defended position in known space. General Ah-Young Kim had been planning the assault on Nexus Gate for months. Her army was the largest multi-species force in galactic history. Over 2 million soldiers from 40 different worlds, all united by their hatred of Vorthak oppression. "Remember," she told her commanders during the final briefing, "the Vorthak still think like an empire. They expect us to attack their strongest points with our strongest forces. Instead, we are going to show them something they have never seen before." The human concept of acceptable losses was completely alien to Vorthak military thinking. Their psychic coordination meant that every soldier was valuable, every ship was irreplaceable. They had never faced an enemy willing to sacrifice everything for abstract concepts like freedom and justice. General Ah-Young Kim's plan relied on that weakness. While the main Vorthak fleet prepared to defend the heavily fortified gate itself, her real attack would come from an unexpected direction. Captain Ho-Seok Kim piloted his small fighter through the asteroid field surrounding Nexus Gate, his ship loaded with the most powerful neural disruptor ever built. Dr. Min Ji-song had spent weeks developing the device, combining human technology with alien innovations from a dozen different species. The disruptor will overload every psychic network within 10,000 kilometers, Minji had explained during the mission briefing. But the pilot will have to get close to the central command core to deploy it effectively. Everyone understood what that meant. The mission was suicide. The pilot would not survive the psychic feedback when the device activated. Ho-Seok had volunteered anyway. His younger brother had been on Kepler 442b when Admiral Morketh destroyed it. 2 million people had died on that world, including thousands of children who had never known anything but freedom. "For everyone who cannot fight for themselves," Ho-Seok whispered as he approached the massive Vorthak battle station. The Nexus Gate facility was a crystal fortress the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons and protected by energy shields that could stop any conventional attack. But Ho-Seok was not making a conventional attack. His small fighter, disguised with captured Vorthak technology, slipped through the outer defenses undetected. The aliens were focused on the massive fleet battle raging in the distance, where General Ah-Young Kim's forces were making what appeared to be a desperate frontal assault. Ho-Seok reached the station's central core just as the neural disruptor finished charging. He thought about his brother, about the 2 million dead on Kepler 442b, about all the species that had lived in slavery for 3,000 years. "This is for everyone who dreams of freedom," he said, and activated the device. The explosion of psychic energy was visible across half the galaxy. Every Vorthak within 10,000 kilometers felt their minds invaded by the chaotic, impossible thoughts of human consciousness. But this was not just the neural static that had disrupted previous battles. This was something far more powerful. Minji. Song had discovered that human brains did not just produce psychic noise. They produced something that was fundamentally incompatible with Vorthak consciousness. Human thoughts were individual, chaotic, unpredictable. Vorthak minds were collective, ordered, harmonious. When the two types of consciousness collided at sufficient intensity, the result was devastating. Every Vorthak in the Nexus Gate facility experienced what their species called the silence, the complete inability to connect with other minds. For beings who had never been truly alone in their entire lives, the experience was more terrifying than death. Admiral Moraketh felt his perfectly ordered mind suddenly cut off from the collective consciousness of his species. For the first time in his 400-year life, he was completely alone with his own thoughts. The isolation was so complete, so overwhelming, that many Vorthak simply shut down rather than face it. "What have they done to us?" he whispered, but there was no one to hear him. His crew drifted through the station like ghosts, each one trapped in the prison of their own individual consciousness. The battle for Nexus Gate was over in hours. Without psychic coordination, the Vorthak defenders could not operate their weapons or coordinate their defenses. General Ah Young Kim's forces captured the facility with minimal casualties, cutting the Empire in half. But the real victory was happening across the galaxy, as news of the Nexus Gate battle reached every enslaved world. The Vorthak Empire, which had seemed invincible for 3,000 years, was falling apart. On the ocean world of Aquarius Prime, Kelhari rebels surfaced from the depths to find Vorthak facilities abandoned. The alien overseers had simply walked away, unable to cope with the isolation of individual consciousness. On the desert world of Kepler 9, Thrixian workers found their alien masters huddled in their command centers, staring blankly at walls. The psychic feedback had reached even there, leaving the Vorthak mentally shattered. Emperor Kethmar sat alone in his crystal throne room, feeling the empire he had ruled for centuries crumbling around him. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Defeated fleets, abandoned colonies, rebellion spreading faster than his remaining forces could respond. But the most terrifying report came from his own palace guards. The neural disruption had reached even the capital world, and many of his soldiers could no longer function effectively. The perfect psychic harmony that had defined Vorthak civilization for millennia was breaking down. How? The Emperor asked his remaining advisors. How can primitive beings destroy an empire that has lasted 3,000 years? His chief advisor, one of the few Vorthak who had partially recovered from the psychic trauma, provided an answer that the Emperor did not want to hear. "Your Magnificence, I have studied the humans extensively. They are not just primitive. They are something we have never encountered before. Their entire species exists in a state of psychic chaos that we would consider madness. But that chaos makes them unpredictable, adaptable, and impossible to control. You are saying they won because they are insane? No, Your Magnificence. I'm saying they won because they are free. They have never known the unity of collective consciousness, so they do not fear losing it. They have always been individuals, so isolation does not destroy them. They are everything we are not." Emperor Kethmar felt something he had never experienced in his long life: true despair. The Empire was not just losing a war, it was being defeated by concepts that the Vorthak could not understand or counter. As if summoned by his thoughts, an alarm sounded throughout the palace. Enemy ships were approaching the capital world, not just human vessels, but a mixed fleet representing dozens of species. The rebellion had reached the very heart of the Empire. Admiral Sun Wu Jiang broadcast a message to the planet as her fleet took position around the Vorthak homeworld. Her words were transmitted not just in the Vorthak language, but in the languages of every enslaved species in the galaxy. "People of the galaxy," she began, "today we offer the Vorthak the same choice they have given to countless worlds over 3,000 years. Surrender completely and accept a new order based on freedom and cooperation, or face the consequences of your actions." She paused, thinking of Kepler 442b and the 2 million beings who had died there. "But unlike the Vorthak Empire, we offer genuine mercy to those who surrender. We fight not for conquest but for liberation. We fight not to enslave but to free. The age of empires is ending. The age of cooperation begins now." In his crystal throne room, Emperor Kethmar faced a choice that no Vorthak ruler had ever confronted. For 3,000 years, the Empire had known only victory. Now, for the first time in their recorded history, they faced defeat. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see whether the oldest empire in known space would choose surrender or annihilation. And on a small blue planet called Earth, humanity watched as their impossible dream of galactic freedom finally came within reach. The stars twisted and bent as 300 warships tore through the fabric of space itself. The Valorian Imperial Armada emerged at the edge of Earth's solar system like a swarm of metallic locusts, each vessel larger than any city humanity had ever built. Their hulls gleamed with the markings of conquest, symbols from 1,000 dead civilizations etched into their armor like trophies. Admiral Thexkor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, his 4 arms clasped behind his broad back. His scales shimmered purple in the dim light, a sign of satisfaction among his kind. Through the massive viewing screen, he watched the small blue planet rotating peacefully in the distance. It looked so fragile, so insignificant. "Another primitive world," he said to his second officer. "This will take perhaps 3 cycles, no more." The second officer nodded, his head fins rippling with agreement. The Valorians had conquered 417 worlds in the past 2 centuries. Earth would be number 418. The humans had barely left their own planet when the Valorians first discovered them 10 years ago. They had no real fleet, no energy shields, no plasma weapons, just chemical rockets and simple machines. Thexkor activated the communication array. His voice boomed across every frequency, translated into 47 human languages by the ship's computers. "Humans of Earth, I am Admiral Thexkor of the Valorian Empire. Your world has been selected for integration into our glorious domain. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be minimal. Resist and we will burn your cities until nothing remains but ash and memory." On Earth, the message played across every screen, every radio, every device capable of receiving a signal. In the United Nations Emergency Command Center buried deep beneath the Swiss Alps, General Marcus Stone listened to the alien's words with a grim expression. Around him, representatives from every nation on Earth sat in silence. "Well," said President Chen of the Asian Coalition, "we knew this day would come." "Indeed," replied Chancellor Okonkwo of the African Union. "The question is, are we ready?" General Stone allowed himself a thin smile. "They think we've been sitting idle for 10 years. They think we're still using chemical rockets and ballistic missiles. Let's show them how wrong they are." He pressed a button on his console. Across Earth's solar system, fleets that had been hidden in the shadows of moons and asteroids began to power up. Space stations that looked abandoned suddenly came alive with energy, and on Earth itself, in secret bases hidden beneath oceans and mountains, weapons that had taken a decade to build hummed with deadly purpose. The human response came not in words, but in action. A simple message broadcast on the same frequencies the Valorians had used. "Come and take it." Admiral Thexkor laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through his bridge. "Brave words from dead fools. Forward fleet, advance to Mars orbit. Destroy any resistance you encounter." 50 Valorian warships broke formation and accelerated toward the red planet. Their shields glowed with power, their weapons charged and ready. They expected perhaps a few primitive spacecraft, maybe some brave humans willing to die for nothing. What they found was hell itself. The human fleet appeared as if from nowhere. Ships emerged from behind Mars's moons, from the asteroid belt, from hiding places the Valorians had never thought to check. There were hundreds of them, and they looked nothing like the primitive vessels in the Valorian database. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UNES Indomitable, humanity's first true warship. Around her, the crew worked with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this moment every day for the past 5 years. "All ships, this is Chen," she said into her communicator. "Weapons free. Show them what humans can do." The Indomitable's railguns fired first. Chunks of tungsten accelerated to 30% the speed of light, turned into projectiles that carried more kinetic energy than nuclear weapons. The Valorian shields, designed to stop energy beams and plasma bolts, might as well have been paper. The rounds punched through them like they weren't even there. The first Valorian ship exploded in a ball of fire and debris, then the second. Then the third. Admiral Thexkor watched in disbelief as his forward fleet died. The humans weren't using energy weapons at all. They were using simple mass and velocity. The most basic physics turned into devastating weapons, and there were so many of them. How? He whispered. How did they build all of this? His intelligence officer pulled up data, his hands shaking. Admiral, our information was wrong. Very wrong. The humans have been building this fleet for years. They have bases on every planet, every moon. They've militarized their entire solar system. On the human side, the battle was going better than anyone had hoped. The mining ships from the asteroid belt converted into missile platforms launched thousands of warheads. Corporate freighters, disguised but heavily armed, flanked the Valorian ships and tore into them with concentrated fire. Even the small patrol craft, barely larger than shuttles, swarmed the alien vessels like angry hornets. The Valorians tried to adapt. They changed their tactics, used their superior speed and maneuverability. But the humans had prepared for every possibility. For every move the Valorians made, humanity had a counter. A Valorian cruiser attempted to flee back to the main fleet. Human cyber warfare teams, who had been quietly infiltrating Valorian systems since the first message was broadcast, locked its engines. The ship drifted helplessly as human missiles found their mark. Another Valorian ship tried to use its planet-killer weapon, a massive beam designed to crack worlds open. The weapon charged, energy building to devastating levels. Then it exploded, taking the ship with it. Human hackers had found the weapon's control systems and reversed its polarity. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 40 Valorian ships were destroyed. Debris floated through Mars orbit like a metal graveyard. The remaining 10 ships of the forward fleet limped back to the main armada, battered and broken. Admiral Thexkor stared at the reports in silence. He had lost 40 ships to primitives. Primitives who weren't primitive at all. Send a message to the Valorian High Command, he said quietly. Request immediate reinforcements. Tell them Earth is not what we thought. His communications officer looked up, fear in his eyes. Admiral, I cannot. Something is blocking all hyperspace transmissions. We cannot contact home. The realization hit Thexkor like a physical blow. The humans had jammed their communications. The entire Valorian fleet was trapped in this system with no way to call for help. And somewhere out there in the dark, the main human fleet was waiting. On Earth, General Stone watched the battle reports with satisfaction. The Valorians had taken the bait perfectly. They thought the forward engagement was humanity's best effort. They had no idea what was really coming. Phase 1 complete, he said. Prepare Phase 2. It's time to show them the real fleet. In hidden bases across the solar system, massive ships began to move. Ships that had been built in secret. Using technology reverse-engineered from every alien signal the Valorians had carelessly broadcast. Ships that were larger, faster, and deadlier than anything the Valorians had ever faced. The war for Earth had just begun, and humanity was playing for keeps. The Valorian fleet regrouped near Jupiter's orbit, licking their wounds and trying to understand what had gone wrong. Admiral Thexkor paced his bridge like a caged animal, his forearms gesturing wildly as he shouted orders. The humans had hurt him, embarrassed him, but he still had 260 ships, more than enough to crush any resistance. We underestimated them once, he told his officers. We will not make that mistake again. Full battle formation. We advance together, shields at maximum, all weapons ready. We will burn through whatever they throw at us and reduce their planet to molten rock. The Valorian armada moved forward as one massive wall of metal and firepower. They scanned every asteroid, every moon, every piece of debris. This time there would be no surprises. This time, they would be ready. They were not ready. The asteroid belt exploded with activity. What the Valorians had dismissed as simple rocks were actually camouflaged installations. Hundreds of them, each armed with missile pods and railgun batteries. The barrage came from every direction at once, a storm of metal and fire that lit up the darkness of space. Valorian point defense systems worked overtime, shooting down missiles and deflecting kinetic rounds, but there were too many. The sheer volume of fire overwhelmed their defenses. Ships took hits, their shields flickering and failing under the relentless assault. Return fire, Thexkor roared. Destroy those installations. The Valorian fleet's plasma cannons lit up the asteroid belt, turning rocks into molten slag. But for every installation they destroyed, 2 more revealed themselves. The humans had turned the entire belt into a fortress, and the Valorians were caught in a deadly crossfire. Then the mining drones arrived, thousands of small craft. No larger than cars swarmed the Valorian fleet. The aliens initially ignored them, focusing on the larger threats. That was their second mistake. Each drone was packed with explosives and guided by simple but effective AI. They crashed into Valorian ships by the hundreds, detonating against hulls and engines. Individual drones did little damage, but thousands of them together became a devastating weapon. Valorian shields, already weakened by the asteroid installations, began to fail completely, ships listed to the side, venting atmosphere and fire. Commander Sarah Chen watched from her position near Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon. The Indomitable and the main human battle fleet remained hidden, waiting for the right moment. Around her, captains from every nation on Earth held their positions with iron discipline. "Not yet," she said calmly, watching the Valorian fleet struggle against the automated defenses. "Let them commit fully. Let them think the drones and installations are our main attack." Admiral Thexkor was thinking exactly that. He had lost another 30 ships to the asteroid belt defenses, but his fleet had pushed through. The way to Earth's inner system lay open before him. Victory was still within reach. "Advance to Mars," he ordered. "Once we pass the red planet, nothing stands between us and Earth. Prepare the planet-killer weapons. We will make an example of their homeworld." The Valorian fleet accelerated, leaving the burning ruins of the asteroid belt behind. They moved past Mars, past the orbit where they had lost their forward fleet days earlier. Space seemed empty now, quiet. The humans were done. They had thrown everything they had and failed. Then Europa opened up. The ice moon's surface cracked and split as massive launch bays revealed themselves. The human main battle fleet emerged like leviathans from the deep. These were not converted mining ships or disguised freighters. These were true warships, built from scratch over 10 years of desperate preparation. The UNES Indomitable led the charge, followed by the Defiant, the Retribution, the Unbreakable, and 100 others. Each ship was as large as a Valorian cruiser, armed with weapons that combined human innovation with reverse-engineered alien technology. "All ships," Sarah Chen's voice rang across the fleet channels. "Fire at will." The space between the two fleets became a wall of light and death. Human railguns fired rounds that glowed white-hot from atmospheric friction, even in the vacuum of space. Laser arrays powered by fusion reactors cut through Valorian armor like burning wire through ice. Nuclear missiles, each carrying warheads 50 times more powerful than anything used in Earth's old wars, found their targets with terrifying accuracy. But this time, the Valorians were ready too. Their plasma cannons returned fire, sending superheated bolts of energy screaming toward the human fleet. Valorian missile pods launched seeking weapons that tracked and hunted human ships. The battle became chaos, a mad swirl of destruction where ships from both sides died in brilliant flashes of light. Sarah Chen gripped her command chair as the Indomitable shook from a near miss. "Damage report. Shields at 60%, her tactical officer called out. "Hull integrity holding. We're still in the fight, Commander." "Good. Target that Valorian dreadnought, the one with the gold markings. All forward batteries concentrated fire." The Indomitable's weapons spoke as one. Tungsten rounds traveling at relativistic speed struck the Valorian dreadnought's shields. The first volley weakened them. The second cracked them. The third punched through and struck the ship itself. The dreadnought broke apart, its reactor going critical and taking 2 nearby Valorian cruisers with it in the explosion. Admiral Thexkor felt fear for the first time in his long military career. The humans were not just defending anymore. They were attacking with the fury of a cornered animal, and they were winning. His fleet, which had seemed so powerful just days ago, was being torn apart. "Use the gravity weapon," he shouted desperately. "Channel Jupiter's magnetic field, disrupt their electronics." The Valorians activated their most advanced weapon, a device that could manipulate planetary magnetic fields and use them as massive electromagnetic pulse generators. It had never failed before. The weapon charged, drawing power from Jupiter's enormous magnetic field. Then it reversed. Valorian ships across the fleet suddenly went dark as their own weapon turned against them. Electronics fried, shields failed, life support systems shut down. Admiral Thexkor stared in horror at his command screens as they flickered and died. In the human fleet, cyber warfare specialist Lieutenant James Park smiled grimly. His team had been inside Valorian computer systems for 3 days now, waiting for this exact moment. When the aliens tried to use their gravity weapon, human hackers were ready. A few lines of malicious code, inserted at exactly the right moment, and the weapon became humanity's greatest ally. Enemy fleet disabled, Park reported to Commander Chen. Approximately 70% of their ships have lost power. The rest are operating at reduced capacity. Sarah Chen allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before issuing her next orders. All ships advance. Target their command vessels. Let's end this. The human fleet surged forward. Without their shields and weapons, the Valorian ships were helpless. Human railguns and missiles found their marks with surgical precision. One by one, the great warships of the Valorian Empire died. Admiral Thexcor's flagship regained partial power just in time for him to see his fleet destroyed around him. Of the 260 ships he had led into battle, fewer than 100 remained. And the humans were not stopping. They pressed their advantage with ruthless efficiency, showing no mercy, accepting no surrender. "Retreat," Thexcor whispered, his voice broken. Then louder, "All ships retreat to the outer system. Scatter formation, maximum speed." The surviving Valorian vessels turned and fled, burning their engines at maximum power to escape the human onslaught. They left behind the wreckage of their dead, a field of debris that stretched for millions of kilometers. Commander Chen watched them run and made a decision that would define the rest of the war. Pursue them. We don't stop until every Valorian ship is destroyed or surrendered. They came here to enslave us. Let's show them what happens when you threaten humanity. The human fleet gave chase, and the Battle of Jupiter ended not with a glorious last stand, but with a desperate retreat. The hunters had become the hunted, and Earth's vengeance had only just begun. 3 weeks had passed since the Battle of Jupiter, and the Valorian fleet had learned to fear the silence of space. Every shadow could hide a human ship. Every asteroid could be a weapon. Every quiet moment could be the calm before another devastating attack. Admiral Thexcor commanded fewer than 80 ships now, barely a quarter of the force he had brought to Earth. They drifted near Saturn, trying to repair damaged vessels and formulate some kind of plan. The admiral looked older now, his scales dull, his movements slow. He had sent hundreds of messages trying to reach the Valorian homeworld, but the human jamming was absolute. They were alone, trapped, dying slowly. "Admiral," his tactical officer said quietly, "the humans are broadcasting again." Thexcor activated the view screen. A human woman appeared wearing a dark military uniform with symbols of rank he did not recognize. She looked tired but determined, her eyes hard as steel. "I am Commander Sarah Chen of the United Earth Naval Fleet," she said. "To the Valorian forces in our system, we offer you one chance. Surrender unconditionally. Power down your weapons, disable your engines, and prepare to be boarded. You will stand trial for attempted genocide and for crimes committed against humanity. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact." The transmission ended. Admiral Thexcor stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Surrender, stand trial. The very concepts were alien to him. The Valorian Empire did not surrender. The Valorian Empire conquered or died trying. "Admiral?" his second officer asked. "Your orders?" "We fight," Thexcor said, though his voice lacked conviction. "We are Valorians. We do not bow to lesser species," but even as he spoke the words, he knew they were hollow. The humans were not a lesser species. If anything, they were the most dangerous enemy the Valorians had ever faced. They fought with a creativity and viciousness that no other race had shown. They turned every disadvantage into a weapon. They never stopped, never slowed, never showed mercy. The human fleet found them 2 days later. Commander Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the Valorian ships on her tactical display. They were clustered together near Saturn's moon Titan, clearly trying to use the moon's bulk as cover. It was a good defensive position, which meant nothing against humanity's new capabilities. "Status on the hyperspace disruptor?" she asked. "Online and operational," her science officer replied. "We can now create our own hyperspace windows." "Tested and confirmed." Sarah Chen smiled, though there was no warmth in it. The humans had done in 3 weeks what should have taken years. They had reverse-engineered Valorian hyperspace technology, improved it, and weaponized it. Earth scientists and engineers had worked around the clock, driven by the knowledge that their entire species depended on their success. "Good. Helm, jump the fleet to the far side of Titan. Let's give the Valorians a proper surprise." Space twisted and reality bent as the human fleet vanished from their position and reappeared on the opposite side of the moon. The Valorians, who had been watching the empty space where the humans should approach from, suddenly found themselves flanked and surrounded. Admiral Thexacor felt his heart sink as human ships appeared all around his fleet. They had the same technology now. The one advantage the Valorians had possessed was gone. Now they had nothing but pride and desperation. All ships defensive formation, he ordered.
Fight for the Empire.
The Battle of Titan began and ended in less than an hour. The Valorians fought bravely, throwing everything they had at the human fleet. But they were outnumbered, outgunned, and outmaneuvered. Human ships danced around them, using short hyperspace jumps to appear and disappear like ghosts. Valorian weapons fired at empty space while human railguns found their marks with mechanical precision. One by one, the Valorian ships fell silent. Some were destroyed outright, blown apart by overwhelming firepower. Others were disabled, their engines and weapons destroyed while their crew compartments remained intact. The humans were taking prisoners now, capturing Valorians alive for interrogation. Admiral Thexacor watched his fleet die around him. His flagship, the Eternal Dominion, had taken heavy damage. Systems were failing across the ship. His crew looked to him for orders, but he had none left to give. They had lost. The mighty Valorian Empire, conqueror of worlds, had been defeated by a single planet of primitives. Admiral, his communications officer said, his voice shaking, "The humans are hailing us." Commander Chen's face appeared on the screen again. Behind her, Thexacor could see human crew members working efficiently, confidently. They had the air of victors, of a species that had proven itself in the crucible of war. "Admiral Thexacor," Chen said, "your fleet is defeated. Your ships are disabled or destroyed. You have nowhere to run, no way to call for help, and no hope of victory. I am giving you one final chance to surrender. If you refuse, we will destroy your flagship and everyone aboard. You have 5 minutes to decide." The transmission ended. Thexacor looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were afraid, defeated, waiting for him to make a choice that would determine whether they lived or died. He thought of all the worlds the Valorian Empire had conquered, all the species they had enslaved or exterminated. He wondered if any of them had felt this same helpless despair. "Shut down all weapons," he said quietly.
"Disable the engines."
"Prepare for boarding." The Eternal Dominion went dark, its aggressive systems powering down one by one. Around it, the last surviving Valorian ships did the same. The war was over and humanity had won. Human boarding parties arrived within the hour, led by soldiers in powered armor that made them look like walking tanks. They moved through the Valorian ships with practiced efficiency, rounding up crew members and securing weapons. They were professional but cold, showing no cruelty but also no sympathy. Admiral Thexacor was brought before Commander Chen on the bridge of the Indomitable. He stood in magnetic restraints, his forearms bound, his head held high despite his defeat. Chen studied him for a long moment before speaking. "Do you know why we won?" she asked. Thexacor said nothing. "We won because you underestimated us," Chen continued. "You saw our lack of advanced technology and assumed we were primitive. You didn't bother to learn about us to understand what drives us. You just assumed we would roll over and die like all the others." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "But humans don't roll over. We adapt, we innovate, we survive, and when someone threatens our home, we fight with everything we have. You wanted to enslave us. Instead, you've given us a reason to become something far more dangerous." Chen gestured to her tactical officer, who pulled up a holographic display. It showed star charts, information on the Valorian Empire, data extracted from captured ships. "We know everything now," she said. "We know about your empire. We know about the species you've enslaved. We know about the worlds you've burned, and we're going to do something about it." Thexacor felt a chill run through his body. "What do you mean?" Sarah Chen's expression was as hard as the tungsten rounds her ships fired. "We're taking the war to you. We're going to free every species you've enslaved. We're going to dismantle your empire piece by piece. And we're going to make sure the galaxy knows what happens when you attack Earth." She nodded to the guards. "Take him to the brig. He'll stand trial with the others. Make sure he's comfortable. We're not barbarians." As Thexacor was led away, he heard Chen issue her next orders to the fleet. "All ships prepare for hyperspace transit. Plot a course to the nearest Valorian colony world. It's time to send a message the Empire won't forget." The human fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of the Valorian Armada floating in Saturn's orbit. Earth had won the battle for survival. Now they were going on the offensive and nothing would stop them. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kelnar system, home to a Valorian colony world and an enslaved species called the Orath. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, studying the tactical display. 24 Valorian warships orbited the planet, likely garrison forces left to keep the population under control. "Scan the planet," she ordered. "I want to know the population distribution, military installations, everything." The science officer worked quickly. Population of approximately 4 billion Orath on the surface. 60 million Valorians in administrative cities, multiple military bases, orbital defense platforms, and what appears to be a slave processing facility in the northern continent. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. Slave processing facility? The reports from interrogated Valorian prisoners had been horrifying, but seeing the evidence with her own eyes made it real. The Valorian Empire was not just an aggressive military power. It was a machine that consumed entire civilizations. "Open a channel to the Valorian garrison commander," she said. A Valorian appeared on the screen, younger than Admiral Thexkor but with the same arrogant bearing. His scales were bright green, marking him as a noble caste member. "I am Commander Vexthor of the garrison fleet. You are human ships. How did you acquire hyperspace technology? Where is Admiral Thexkor's armada?" "Your armada is destroyed," Sarah said flatly. "Admiral Thexkor is our prisoner. Your empire sent 300 ships to conquer Earth. Fewer than 20 survived, and those only because we chose to let them live. Now I'm giving you the same choice we gave Thexkor. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Vexthor's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to rage. "You lie! The Empire's fleet cannot be defeated by primitives. You must have had help from the Galactic Council, or perhaps the Nexus Combine. There is no other explanation. We did it alone," Sarah replied. "And if you don't believe me, feel free to attack us. We'll add your ships to the wreckage we left in our home system." Vexthor snarled and cut the transmission. On the tactical display, the Valorian ships began powering up their weapons and moving into attack formation. Sarah sighed. She had hoped they would be smart enough to surrender. Apparently not. All ships battle stations. Rules of engagement are weapons-free, but try to minimize debris that could hit the planet. These people have suffered enough without us adding to it. The human fleet spread out into a battle formation that the Valorians had never seen before. Instead of a traditional line or sphere, the humans formed a loose web pattern, each ship positioned to support the others while maintaining maximum firing angles. It was a formation designed by military AI and perfected through simulated combat scenarios. The Valorian garrison fleet charged forward, confident in their superior numbers and position. They had orbital platforms, defensive satellites, and the high ground. What they did not have was experience fighting an enemy who had spent every day for the past month learning how to kill their kind more efficiently. The battle was brutal and one-sided. Human ships used their newly mastered hyperspace technology to jump in close, unleash devastating barrages, and jump away before Valorian weapons could target them effectively. The garrison forces, designed to intimidate enslaved populations rather than fight peer adversaries, were simply not prepared for this level of combat. Commander Vexthor watched his fleet disintegrate around him. Ship after ship went dark, disabled or destroyed by human weapons. The orbital platforms that should have provided covering fire were destroyed in the opening minutes of the battle. His confidence evaporated as he realized he was facing the same enemy that had destroyed Admiral Thexkor's armada. "All ships retreat to planetary defense positions," he ordered desperately. "Use the planet as a shield." The remaining Valorian ships tried to fall back to low orbit, hoping the humans would hesitate to fire with the planet behind them. They were wrong. Human targeting systems were precise enough to ensure every shot that missed would skip off the atmosphere, rather than strike the surface. The Valorians had no such luxury. Within 30 minutes, the garrison fleet was eliminated. Commander Vexthor found himself in the same position as Admiral Thexkor had been, sitting in magnetic restraints aboard a human ship, facing an enemy he had underestimated. But Sarah Chen was not interested in talking to him. She had other priorities. "Establish communication with the planet's surface," she ordered. "Find the Orath resistance if there is one, and get me a connection to whoever is in charge of that slave processing facility." The Orath resistance found them first. A transmission came from the planet's surface, encrypted but easily broken by human cyber warfare specialists. A being appeared on the screen, reptilian like the Valorians but smaller with softer features and eyes that held generations of suffering. "Human ships," the being said in broken galactic common. "We are Jexra of the Orath Liberation Front. We have watched your battle. Is it true? Did you defeat the Empire's armada at your homeworld?" "It's true," Sarah confirmed. "And we're here to help you." "How many Orath are ready to fight?" Jexra's eyes widened. "Millions. But we have no weapons, no training. The Valorians took everything when they conquered us 40 years ago." "That's about to change," Sarah said. "We're sending down supply ships with weapons and training equipment. We're also jamming all Valorian communications. The Empire won't know what happened here until we're ready to tell them." Over the next 3 weeks, the human fleet transformed the Kelnar system. Weapons flowed to the Orath resistance, along with military advisors who taught them how to use modern combat tactics. The Valorian administrative cities were surrounded and isolated. The slave processing facility was stormed by a joint human Orath force and shut down permanently. But Chen's work in Kelnar was just the beginning. While her fleet helped the Orath organize their new government, other human ships were jumping to different systems, spreading across Valorian space like a virus. Each ship carried the same message. The Empire is broken, the Armada is destroyed, and anyone who wants their freedom need only reach out and take it. The effect was explosive. Species that had been enslaved for decades or centuries rose up against their Valorian overlords. Rebellions erupted on a dozen worlds simultaneously. Valorian garrison fleets, already spread thin, maintaining control of conquered territories, found themselves fighting on multiple fronts against enemies who were suddenly armed with human weapons and tactics. The Galactic Council watched all of this with growing alarm. The Council was a loose alliance of spacefaring species that officially promoted peace and cooperation, but mostly tried to stay out of each other's way. They had known about the Valorian Empire's aggression, but had chosen not to intervene, believing it was not their problem. Now it was everyone's problem. The humans had upset the entire balance of power in the galaxy in a matter of weeks. Ambassador Krell of the Council sent a priority message to Earth, requesting an immediate meeting. General Marcus Stone, who had coordinated Earth's defense from the beginning, received the ambassador in the United Nations building. Krell was a tall, thin being with too many joints in his limbs and a translator device hanging from his neck. "General Stone," Krell said, "the Council is concerned about human military actions in Valorian space. While we understand your need for self-defense, the Council believes your current campaign of liberation exceeds the bounds of proportional response." Stone looked at the alien ambassador with cold eyes. "Where was the Council when the Valorians attacked us? Where was the Council when they were enslaving innocent species? You watched and did nothing. Now you're concerned because we're actually doing something about it?" "The Council prefers diplomatic solutions," Krell said carefully. "Military force should be a last resort." "It was a last resort," Stone replied. "The Valorians gave us no choice. They came to our home with 300 warships and demanded our surrender. We fought back and won. Now we're making sure they can't do the same thing to anyone else. If the Council has a problem with that, you're welcome to try and stop us." Krell shifted uncomfortably. "General, you must understand. The humans are unknown to us. You appeared in the galaxy only recently, and already you have demonstrated military capabilities that rival the most advanced species. The Council is worried about what you might do next." Stone leaned forward. "Here's what we're going to do next, Ambassador. We're going to finish dismantling the Valorian Empire. We're going to free every enslaved species we can find, and then we're going to go home and hope that everyone else in the galaxy learns the lesson the Valorians learned the hard way." "And what lesson is that?" Krell asked. "Don't mess with Earth." 6 months after the Valorian Armada first entered Earth's solar system, a human fleet emerged from hyperspace above the Valorian homeworld. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, looking at the planet that had sent 300 ships to destroy her home. It looked peaceful from orbit, with its purple oceans and silver cities gleaming in the light of its twin suns. But Chen knew better. This was the heart of an empire built on slavery and conquest, and today that empire would fall. "Status of the Valorian home fleet?" she asked. Her tactical officer studied the displays. 247 ships in orbit, Admiral. They're in defensive formation around the planet. Another 100 ships are in the outer system moving to intercept us. Chen had been promoted after the Battle of Titan, but she still felt strange being called admiral. She was a soldier who had been thrust into command by necessity, not ambition, but she had learned to wear the rank well. "How many ships do we have?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. 83 combat-ready vessels, Admiral. We're outnumbered almost 4-1. Around the bridge, some of the crew shifted nervously. They had won every battle so far, but those had been against garrison forces and scattered patrol fleets. This was different. This was the Valorian military's true strength. The ships that had been held back to protect the homeworld. If humanity lost here, there would be no second chances. "Open a channel to the Valorian fleet," Chen ordered. "All frequencies, maximum power. I want everyone in this system to hear this." The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, Admiral." Chen took a breath and began. "People of the Valorian Empire, 6 months ago, your leader sent an armada to Earth with orders to conquer and enslave my people. That armada is destroyed. Admiral Thexkor is our prisoner, along with thousands of Valorian soldiers. They will stand trial for attempted genocide." She paused, letting that sink in before continuing. "But we are not here for revenge. We are here to deliver a message. The age of Valorian conquest is over. Every species you enslaved is rising up against you. Every world you conquered is fighting for its freedom. Your empire is collapsing, and there is nothing you can do to stop it." On the planet below, billions of Valorians watched the human fleet in their skies. Many had not believed the reports of the armada's destruction. They thought it was enemy propaganda. Lies spread to weaken their resolve. Now they saw the proof with their own eyes. Alien ships, human ships, hovering over their homeworld with impunity. In the command center of the Valorian Defense Fleet, Supreme Admiral Corvus listened to Chen's words with a mixture of rage and fear. He was the highest-ranking military officer in the Empire, a veteran of 100 campaigns. He had spent his entire life building and maintaining Valorian dominance. Now this human, this primitive from a backwater world, dared to declare his empire finished. "Prepare all weapons," he ordered. "We will show these humans what the true strength of Valorian looks like. We will crush them, and then we will find their homeworld and burn it to ash." But before he could give the order to fire, something strange happened. The human ships did not attack. Instead, they began broadcasting something else. Video recordings, transmissions, data packets sent on every frequency the Valorians used. The broadcasts showed the destruction of the Valorian armada at Earth. They showed the battles at Jupiter and Titan, with Valorian ships exploding under human fire. They showed garrison fleets being destroyed, colony worlds being liberated, enslaved species rising up in rebellion. The images were undeniable proof of everything Chen had said. But more than that, the broadcast showed something else. They showed interviews with Admiral Thexkor and other captured Valorians, admitting to war crimes and atrocities committed across the galaxy. They showed the slave processing facilities, the conquered worlds, the species that had been wiped out completely. The humans had documented everything, and now they were sharing it with the entire empire. On the planet below, the Valorian people watched and learned the truth about what their empire had done in their name. Many had suspected, of course, but suspicion was different from proof. Now they could not look away from the crimes committed by their leaders. Riots began in the cities. Not everyone supported the Empire's policies, especially the lower castes who had been conscripted to fight wars they did not believe in. The broadcast gave them permission to act on their doubts, to question their leaders, to demand change. Supreme Admiral Corvus watched his world descend into chaos. He still had his fleet, still had his weapons. He could attack the humans, could try to win through force. But what would be the point? Even if he destroyed this human fleet, others would come, and his own people were turning against him. "Admiral," his second officer said quietly, "the humans are hailing us." Sarah Chen's face appeared on his screen. Corvus studied her, seeing the exhaustion in her eyes but also the determination. This was a warrior who had fought for her people and won. He could respect that even as he hated what she represented. "Supreme Admiral Corvus," Chen said, "I know you're considering attacking us. You have more ships, better positioning. You might even win this battle, but it won't matter. Your empire is already finished. The question now is whether it ends with more pointless bloodshed, or whether you choose a different path." "And what path is that?" Corvus asked bitterly. "Surrender," Chen said simply. "Stand down your fleet. Agree to peace terms. Help us build something better than what your empire was. You can't undo the past, but you can choose the future." Corvus closed his eyes. He thought of all the years he had served the Empire, all the worlds he had helped conquer, all the orders he had followed without question. He had believed in Valorian superiority, believed they had the right to rule over lesser species. Now he saw the price of that belief. "If I surrender," he said slowly, "what happens to my people?" "The Valorian species is not our enemy," Chen replied. "Your empire was our enemy. Your policies of conquest and slavery were our enemy. But we don't wage war on civilians. You'll have to answer for your crimes, yes, but your people can have a future if they choose to take it." The choice was not difficult in the end. Corvus had seen too much death already. He would not add his entire species to the list of those destroyed by Valorian pride. "All ships," he said into his command channel. "Stand down. Power down weapons. Prepare for human boarding parties." The Valorian home fleet went dark, ship by ship, until the mighty armada that protected the Empire's heart was nothing but silent metal drifting in orbit. On the planet below, the riots slowed as people watched their military surrender without firing a shot. Some cheered. Others wept. Most simply stood in stunned silence, trying to understand what this meant for their future. Human ships approached the planet carefully, ready for treachery, but none came. Over the next weeks, a new government formed on the Valorian homeworld, one that promised to end the Empire's aggressive policies and work toward peace. It was not perfect, and there were many Valorians who resisted the changes. But it was a start. The Galactic Council, which had watched the entire conflict with growing concern, finally extended an official invitation to Earth. They offered humanity a seat at the Council table, recognition as a major spacefaring power, and access to galactic trade networks. It came with conditions, of course. The humans would have to agree to certain treaties, certain limitations on their military expansion. General Marcus Stone traveled to the Council station to represent Earth. He walked into the Grand Chamber where representatives from 100 species gathered, and he felt the weight of their stares. They were afraid of humanity, he realized. Afraid of what Earth had accomplished, what they might do next. Ambassador Krell, who had visited Earth months earlier, stood to introduce him. "Members of the Council, I present General Marcus Stone of United Earth." Stone stepped forward, looking around at the assembled aliens. He thought carefully about what to say, knowing his words would shape humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. "Members of the Council," he began, "Earth accepts your invitation, but let me be clear about who we are and what we want. We did not ask for this war. We did not seek to become a military power. We simply wanted to survive. The Valorians forced us to become something we never intended to be." He paused, making eye contact with as many council members as he could. "Humanity wants peace. We want cooperation. We want to learn from you and share what we know. But we will not be anyone's subjects. We will not bow to threats, and we will not stand by while innocent species are enslaved or destroyed." "The Council has rules," Krell interjected. "Protocols that all members must follow. We cannot allow unlimited military action even with good intentions." "Then change your rules," Stone said bluntly. "Make them mean something. Because if the Council had acted when the Valorians first started their conquest, none of this would have been necessary. Your inaction created this situation. Don't blame us for cleaning up your mess." The chamber erupted in angry voices, council members shouting objections and defenses. Stone let them argue for a moment before raising his hand for silence. "Thank you for watching and comment for next part."